Greetings, thank you for joining me. Now today I'll be sharing with you 3 different types of altars that I suggest to you and my students to consider setting up. And the reason why you want to set up 3 different types of altars is because each of these altars has a different magical goal or purpose. And I had to really think about this because I get so many questions about what I personally do, and I can't, and I can tell you all, I can spend all day talking about it, but that won't really help you because I've been on such a journey, and throughout that journey I have changed as I've grown. And so now, because of my spiritual connection, I don't have to do all those things I used to do before to be able to get the same result as I do now. So I'm going to make the assumption that while I'm going to give you lots and lots of tips to fast track what should traditionally take you years and years to accomplish magically, and also save you from reading a crap ton of books, which I still recommend you do, but I want you to really be able to practice really fast. And by doing that, you've got to do some of these things that I'm suggesting to you now. And we've got to start with spiritual connection. Okay. The first altar is the Ancestral Altar. The second is the Spiritual Altar, and the third one is a Ceremonial Altar. And I've decided to classify them as that because each of them has a specific goal and each of them has a specific way that you can set it up, even though there is some overlap in the 3 of them. So let's get into it to make this video short for you guys with short attention spans. Okay, so the first one is the Ancestral Altar. How do you set up that? This is really simple. I've shown a video on that before, so you can reflect back onto that if you like. But what this is purely a space dedicated to your ancestors. So people that were once linked into your family that have since passed away. So now I'll just say up front before I forget about this, don't put any photos on this altar of living family members or pictures of yourself next to the dead family member. You don't do that on this altar, and it's also not recommended that you put salt on this altar, because remember, salt on the altar is for removing spiritual energies or swifting it away. We don't want to be doing that on altar spaces. So you'll put, of course, pictures. If you don't have a photo, if you can do a drawing, and if you don't have photos and you can't draw even a stick figure, then put things that reflect a memory of that person. So even as simple as the alcohol they used to drink, or if you have some jewelry, if you knew they like a certain type of flower or scent or color or whatever it is. So that is going to not only invoke a memory of that person for you, but that spirit will know that you're honoring and trying to connect with their memory. That's quite important. So the reason why you're actually setting up this altar is so you can actually connect. And I don't mean that you have to learn how to speak to your dead relatives. What I'm saying is that connection means that you're not thinking of your relatives as dead and buried, and that you'll remember them at Christmas and maybe Easter time, or maybe on their birthday or some significant event. You might say, oh, remember Grandma, and she was so good at cooking Christmas roast dinner. Grandma's picture is actually on your little altar space with a candle burning, and maybe once every so often you will honor her memory and talk to her like she's still living in your current space. This is really important because when you're working in the spiritual realm, as we all are, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're magically inclined, to say the least, is that you really need to start building up layers of not only protection but comfort. And I'm not saying that your dearly departed will be able to bring you anything in the afterlife, especially if they weren't magically inclined. They're not going to develop those skills in the afterlife. They can sometimes, depending on their energy levels, do certain things, but don't bank on it. That's what I'm trying to say. So the purpose of this is to start to feel comfortable with the spiritual world by actually starting with your family that has passed away, and you're talking to them as they're connected to you anyway, energetically and spiritually. So if you look at it, that you and your family are on this little energy, you're all energy balls, and you've all come down here together at certain times, and you're having this experience here, and then as all your balls start to pop and you're going off again into the next level, their energy is still floating around, and you'll reconnect with them in the next time around, different video, but you still have to remember their energy and their life on this plane. I hope that all makes sense. So that's the first thing. How often you do that? Well, if you've never done it before, I'd say that you start by doing it for the first month, maybe every day, lighting a candle, spending a few minutes talking to them. Lots of great books on this subject matter if you want to research it further. And then, getting into it, you might have a weekly ceremony where you just might light a candle and just say, here's to you, or maybe give them a little drink if you like, or do something like that. And then I would always have a picture of them and maybe just remembering them, lighting a candle, putting a fresh flower there, doing something that's going to connect them in your life now versus going to the cemetery once every couple of years and putting some plastic flowers on their grave where you think of them as dead and gone. You're thinking of them in the here and now. Okay, enough said. So let's talk about the spiritual altar now. I'd suggest most of you would need to start thinking about creating a permanent altar space in your home if you haven't done so already. And this is the type of altar space that I'll be talking about right now. Now, this space will really depend upon the tradition that you're following. So for example, if you're a Wiccan or a pagan, you could be setting up this altar space for to give offerings to the spirit or deity that is coming in with the wheel of the year, the changing of the wheel. Now, if you're working on the left-hand path, you won't be changing the altar's theme for every season, but you will be perhaps changing maybe the statue or maybe the sigil that you have on your altar, depending on what demon or what spirit you're actually working with at that time. However, you might always have your main guy as a feature on that altar at all times, and that's perfectly cool as well. So the goal of this altar overall, no matter what you're doing, is to have it as a permanent fixture in your house. So you're either giving praise to that spirit for whatever you're giving praise for, or you're asking for something. So you're putting in a request at this specific altar. This is your working day-to-day altar, if you like, or an altar that is in a position in your house or home that you can have appreciation for whatever season or spirit that you're working with or honoring, bringing into your home and space. So the third type of altar space that is really important to consider bringing on into your own magical practices is that of the ceremonial altar. So why is this different? When you're doing really heavy spell casting or invocation or evocation or specific rites or rituals, you need to do this inside a magical space. And so this magical space, it could be at your spiritual altar if you've basically consecrated the whole area and that altar is just for the purposes of magical operation, so to speak. But for most time, you'll need to have an altar in maybe left-hand path workings that face a certain direction. And so unless you have a temple with a permanent altar that is already facing in that direction that is right for the type of work you're doing, you're going to need a temporary altar or a movable altar that you can actually put inside your magical circle, and have this altar there that is consecrated, that you have tools that are just for that purpose, and you're standing a certain way and you're expecting a spirit to appear in a certain direction. And I'm not talking about Solomon's circle here, but this is basically like an acting set, and everyone has their places, right? It's ceremonial, it's ritual, it's quite specific when you're getting down to rites, rituals, and ceremony, right? So you could have a sigil if you're doing more demon work or spiritual work that has sigils, or you've created your own sigil that you're working off, but you're not having the statues on there, and it's not a place for, showing your praise and so forth. This is different. This is for ceremonial work. This altar can sometimes get really quite messy. And so you have to be relaxed with that. I know a lot of us are quite OCD when it comes to keeping our altars neat and clean. We like it all shiny, but you can't have that if it's a working ceremonial altar. I mean, honestly, sometimes I feel like I hose it off if it's outside, because the whole place is just a gigantic mess. So let's get practical. Now, with the Ancestors Altar, it wouldn't be too hard to find a small space somewhere that you could set up a picture of the family member that's passed away, or maybe there's a few as you're starting to get a little bit older like me, and you can just set up these pictures. You can put a candle, you can put some flowers, and maybe if you have some things that they used to own around that space, and just have a chat to your relatives once a week or whatever. That shouldn't be too hard, right? So, and everyone should have pictures and memories of their family around anyway. So the biggest thing for that, don't put pictures of living people into that space. The second type of altar, your spiritual altar, you can easily set that up, even on a temporary table in your room, where you can do an offering and then put that into a box or something and pack it away if you can't get away with it. Or maybe you have symbolic things of that spirit, symbolic colors of that spirit, and you set up a space with all of those symbolic colors and the vibe of that spirit, but you just don't have a gigantic statue there. That's one way you could sort of think of that. When it comes to your ceremonial altar, once again, this is an altar that can be quite temporary. You can put it up, but you just have to create your magical area, consecrate it all, and once again, once you finish with everything, you wrap that in normally black satin we do, and pack that away so it's ready. But if that is too difficult, get out there into a park or a bush or a beach and do it out there, because it's probably better anyway, and then you can play with the nature spirits as well. Well, I hope this has given you some great tips and ideas on how you can connect to your spiritual ancestors and give praise to the spirits that you're working with and that are helping you in your life, and also given you a few tips on how you can improve magically. Okay, catch you next time. Bye for now.